Right now, on this planet, there are 1.5 billion cows, 26 billion chickens, a billion sheep, a billion pigs. We built all of that on purpose. It took 10,000 years, and every one of those animals spends its entire life eating plants and running away. Not one of them ever hunted. Not one of them ever killed anything. You have eaten thousands of animals. Almost none of them were dangerous. That is not taste. That is not culture. That is a law. And it is older than your species. Ask why we don't eat lions, and the answer comes back instantly. It must be poisonous. It isn't. In Finland and Siberia, people eat bear. In Louisiana, alligator is on the menu. In Iceland, they eat shark. And you eat predators constantly. Tuna is an apex predator. Salmon hunts, cod, bass, trout, every one of them a killer. The chicken on your plate spent its life hunting insects. It would have eaten a mouse if it caught one. So the question was never whether we can. The question is why almost every culture on Earth decided that we shouldn't. The answer is a number you have probably never heard, and it has governed every meal you have ever eaten. 10%. When a cow eats grass, it does not turn into grass. It burns almost all of it. Standing, breathing, staying warm, staying alive. Of all the energy that entered as grass, roughly 10% survives as cow. And when something eats the cow, the tax is charged again. 10,000 kilos of grass become 1,000 kilos of cow. 1,000 kilos of cow become 100 kilos of lion. At every step upward, 90% of the world disappears. You have never bought meat. You have bought stored sunlight. A predator is sunlight that has already been spent. And spent again. A lion is not an animal. A lion is an invoice for 10 cows and a field the size of a village. This is why, out of every large mammal on the planet, we only ever domesticated about 14. Not one of them is a carnivore. Not one. A farm animal turns cheap food into an expensive body. A predator does the opposite. It turns expensive food into a small, fast, furious body that would very much like to eat you. We never chose not to farm predators. We were never able to afford it, and when we finally tried, the bill arrived exactly on time. We began farming bluefin tuna, the most valuable fish in the world. It works. Technically, it works the way burning banknotes for heat works. To grow 1 kilogram of that fish, you feed it something like 15 kilograms of other fish. The food chain sent us the same invoice it has been sending for 500 million years. The pyramid does not negotiate. There is exactly one large carnivore we ever brought inside our world and kept, the dog. Across most of the planet, we did not put it on a plate. We made it a partner. A sentry. A hunter. We like to tell ourselves we spared the dog out of love. We spared the dog because a wolf that hunts beside you returns more calories than a wolf on a plate. The affection came later. The arithmetic came first. But energy is not the only thing moving up the pyramid. Energy divides by 10 at every step. Everything else multiplies. A small fish carries a small dose of mercury. A bigger fish eats 1,000 of them and carries 1,000 doses. The animal at the very top carries the sum of everything beneath it. Inuit hunters have known for centuries, you may eat almost every part of the polar bear. You must never eat the liver. Explorers who ignored that got blinding headaches, vomiting, and then their skin began to peel away in sheets. In 1943, scientists measured what the Inuit had known for 1,000 years. The liver of an apex predator holds enough vitamin A to kill a grown man in a single meal. The predator is not just expensive, it is a container, but poison can be avoided. Parasites can be cooked away. The thing that finally taught us the real rule of the food chain is not alive at all. In 1986 in Britain, cows began to fall down. They lost their balance. They became frightened of doorways, of shadows, of nothing. And when their brains were opened, they had turned to sponge, riddled with holes, as though something had eaten the mind out from the inside. The cause was almost insulting in its simplicity. Protein is expensive, so the industry found a shortcut. Grind up the leftovers of other animals. Feed them back to the cattle. Cheap protein. Efficient. We took an animal that had eaten grass for 10 million years and pushed it up a trophic level. We made the herbivore a cannibal, and something came back. Not a virus, not a bacterium, a protein, a molecule folded the wrong way, no DNA, no metabolism, not alive by any definition we have. It cannot be boiled to death because it was never alive. It survives sterilization, it survives acid. All it does is touch a healthy protein and teach it to fold the wrong way. And then there are two. Britain destroyed more than 4 million cattle. It was not enough. The disease crossed into us. Around 180 people died, most of them young, and here is what almost nobody knows. We had seen it before. In the highlands of Papua New Guinea, among the 4 people, there was a funeral custom. When someone died, their body was eaten by their family. It was not cruelty. It was love. A way of keeping the dead inside the people who loved them. And in the middle of the 20th century, the foray began to die. They trembled. They lost their balance. They laughed, helplessly, joylessly. They called it kuru, the shaking. It was the same thing. A misfolded protein, sleeping for 10 years, 20, sometimes more than 50, before it woke. The cannibalism ended in the 1950s. People were still dying of it half a century later. And then researchers looked at the human genome, not the foray genome, the human genome. We carry prion resistance genes, variants that look as though they were selected for. The interpretation is still argued over, and it should be. But the simplest reading is this. At some point deep in our past, enough of our ancestors ate each other and died of it. That evolution wrote the defense into our DNA. Your body is carrying the receipt. There is one assumption left to lose. We call ourselves the apex predator, the top of the food chain. In 2013, researchers took everything every human on Earth actually eats, the grain, the vegetables, the meat, the fish, and worked out where we really sit. A lion scores around 5. An orca, a polar bear, 5.5. Humans came out at 2.21. That is barely above a cow. The same trophic level as a pig, the same trophic level as an anchovy. We are not the apex predator. We never were. We are an extremely clever grazer that occasionally kills something. And precisely that, is why we won. The pyramid can only afford a handful of animals at the summit. There are around 20,000 lions left in the wild. There are 8 billion of us. We did not become numerous despite refusing to climb the food chain. We became numerous because we refused. So the next time you stand in front of the meat, look at what isn't there. No hunters, no killers, just meter after meter of animals that ate plants and ran away. We told ourselves a story about becoming the ultimate predator. It was never true. We built the cities, the empires, the machines, all of it on grass. The lion is still up there, alone, on the thin, cold summit of a pyramid that can barely hold him. And we are down here at the bottom, 8 billion of us, quietly inheriting the earth,